at the very basic level, why are owners of sports teams being sanctioned for a war declared by a Russian president? Because I'm thinking of myself, if I own, like for example, like some sporting club, like here in the US, whatever it is,
DC
and then
United.
The Commanders.
yeah, and then President Uhuru declares war against Uganda. Like why is my team, like what does that have to do with me?
Yesterday morning, the British government decided to freeze all the assets for Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich, and that includes Chelsea FC. And at the moment, as we know, Chelsea FC was put on sale by Abramovich, but with the freezing of his assets, it was decided that Chelsea FC will be given a special license, which will allow them to be able to continue playing their games. Season ticket holders will go to the stadium. They could not be able to create any more revenue. That means they could not sell any shirts, they could not sell any tickets. Matchday hospitality was reduced to just soft drinks and coffee, and they were given a spending limit. They were given a spending limit of £20,000 for game preparation, and as long as there was no revenue coming in. This led to termination from their main shirt sponsors, 3 telecoms, who decided to pull out. We've seen also Nike, the sponsors of Chelsea, deciding to review their deal with Chelsea. Barclays, who are the team's bankers, have also frozen their accounts and their creditors. The team came out and made a statement and asked the British government to give them a license to access their accounts, or they will not be able to own any matches. So I just want to bring it back to the fellows of the studios. What do you think about this? Do you have any questions? What should happen here, or what do you think should be the next step? And should Chelsea, as a football club, be led to just disappear like that with all the histories, or are there ways for it to be saved?
Okay, Mika, thank you so much for that amazing summary. Like I personally have a lot of questions, and I believe, like we have other people here in the studio who also have questions regarding this situation. Now, before I come to Ruth has a question, but before we get to Ruth, at the very basic level, why are owners of sports teams being sanctioned for a war declared by a Russian president? Because I'm thinking of myself, if I own, like for example, like some sporting club, like here in the US, whatever it is,
DC United.
The Commanders.
yeah, and then President Uhuru declares war against Uganda. Like why is my team, like what does that have to do with me?
It's because of the money. Go
It's how
ahead.
you got your money.
Yes.
So it's how you got your money. So how the oligarchs basically got rich because during the fall of the Soviets, they got state in whatever at like oil. If you're into oil, whatever, it was cheap to get into those industries, and you made your money that way. And because of that, you actually have influence in governing of Russia. So this guy, I cannot even pronounce his name,
Roman Abramovich.
was a governor of either state in Russia.
Yes,
So
he
he has so much influence in power in Russia, and they do say he's actually a close friend of Putin, right?
Putin.
Yeah. So the sanctions, I cannot just sanction Uru. Everything is gonna keep going. I have to inflict as much quote unquote pain to everybody involved in this, in influencing you. That way they will tell you, hey boss, stop this.
Okay, Mika, what do you have to add to this?
What is the reason why we are having Usmanov who partly owns Everton, and Abramovich who partly owns who fully owns Chelsea, being sanctioned, is because we have that Usmanov and Abramovich hold their hands in so many, as Ruth said, so many industrial complexes in Russia. But the main reason is because both of them are very big on petrochemicals and steel industry. They are companies which are usually owned part owned by the government. They shift ownership depending on how it suits trade and getting business, government business. So there's never a clear line about it. But like Abramovich, who owned like 40% of the oil produced from Russia, surrendered his companies to Gazprom, which is the biggest producer of oil in Europe right now, and it's owned by the Russian government. But then if you look at the papers of that conversation, it's like there's some time whereby if an issue would have come to Gazprom, it would have been looked like Abramovich's company bought Gazprom. So there's so many bloodlines on the ownership of the companies. And these guys interviewed ministers who are in the Kremlin right now. So they yield so much power than just being businessmen. Somebody like Abramovich provides steel to the Russian military. So they say his steel is what is used to make the tanks, to make the weapons that are being used on this war. And so the reason, as Ruth has said, you don't just cripple the country, you just don't cripple the king. His foot servants will work. So you put sanctions on Russia, put on Russia's state business, then put Russia sanctions on the richest people in Russia who can support the economy if the state economy is out, and basically just cripple their money coming in. So if all the assets that are in England owned by Abramovich are frozen, that means he cannot liquidate those properties and help fund the war or help fund Russia. So the only way that the U.S. can beat Russia is through economic. Right now, the NATO and everybody else is through economic sanctions. Any other response will be a declaration of war, and that will be World War III. Nobody wants that. So that is how you see these oligarchs are being pulled into this. I hope I've answered your question.
Oh, yeah, that question was answered really well. And I think Ruth also had another question that she wanted to bring up. Ruth.
Yeah, so Mika, you had said that, can I say for once I'm staying in the sports section?
Yeah.
Normally I don't. But
Shocker.
You're talking about Chelsea, and just because of there's a quote I put. I'm gonna say this quickly. There's a quote I put on Instagram the other day. I said I just finished my stint being an expert on infectious diseases, and now I'm an expert in no-fly zone and Eastern European issues. So I feel we're all like that. So I've been reading a lot, anything coming from about Ukraine and how they're trying to cripple Russia, that they stop this war. I've been reading about it, and so one of the things I read about this Chelsea thing is that if the sale has to happen, he has to transfer the team to the UK government. Is that correct? How would that happen?
So what happened was when Abramovich knew this was coming when the war started, and one of the things he did is he tried to hand over the team to the Charities Trust and the Supporters Club. And they both said, no, we cannot take such responsibility of such a team. They refused, so he had to think again. And then he said he has to sell the club, and the proceeds and he's forgiving his loan to the club, but you're still selling. The club is valued at 1.5 million. His loan is like 1.7 million. Billion. So he wanted, but he still asked for 3 billion for it. And he said all that money is going to support all the victims of this war.
In Ukraine.
Now, this is where the fight. When you say all the victims of this war, it means both Ukrainian and Russian victims. And if he can set up a charity fund and the money goes there, then he can decide how to distribute it. He can decide to distribute 90% to the Russian victims and 10% to the Ukrainian victims. So that doesn't sit well with the UK government. So right now, for the club to be sold, and what they're negotiating with him right now is the government that is going to build a vehicle to sell the club, and the money doesn't go to Russia or Abramovich. So he has to let go of the club. If he decides to counter this sale, then unfortunately the club might wither. It might not be able to withstand because they don't have any income coming right now. Even if the government decided to release it to let it run in itself, it's a strange feeling for Chelsea. And no sponsors will want to be involved with this. No people will want to be involved with this. So
Yeah, they
the
can't pay
best way right
salaries.
now is for the government to build a vehicle that allows them to collect whoever is buying the club, to pay the money for the club, and that money goes somewhere that is held by the government and probably then used to charity, maybe for the Ukrainian victims on the Ukraine side or whatever way. But all they want is to ensure this money doesn't go to Abramovich or Russia.